Well, welcome to Life Experiences with William Pelarenos. We are here at our WRMN 1410 AM radio studio in lovely downtown Elgin. And my guest today, we had him on previously. He's an attorney, one of my former prosecutors when I was a policeman. He prosecuted my misdemeanor and traffic cases, including DUI cases. Currently, he's focused on estate planning, and we did an episode where he explained estate planning, what it encompasses. But before we get into conversation, I don't want to talk too much about estate planning today because we already did that. I want to talk about some criminal cases that he not only prosecuted, but cases that he defended after he left the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Some interesting cases that I think you'll find highly informative. Eddie Olivieri is here.
Thanks so much, Bill. I really appreciate you having me on.
Okay, thank you for coming back to the show. As we start, talk about your website that talk about estate planning there.
Sure. So my website is firesideplanning.com. This is my practice area where I focus on estate and legacy planning, and I also represent small business owners, helping them set up their businesses, helping them get financing, helping them get government certifications, and contract review, HR matters, all that sort of stuff.
All right, so that's estate planning, and we already did an episode on that. I just wanted to quickly brief our audience that might not have heard that episode about it. So if you get any estate planning issues, call him at check him out. Check out his website at firesideplanning.com. And today I want to talk about, he was my prosecutor at the Bridgeview Courthouse. From 2006 to 2008?
That's right. Yeah.
But when you started with the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, you actually, they started you in appeals, correct?
That's right. Yeah, so I started in the appellate division, and so I briefed and argued court cases in the Illinois Appellate Court. I was there for about a year before I got transferred to the Bridgeview Courthouse.
And you prosecuted misdemeanors as well as traffic cases such as DUIs, correct?
In Bridgeview, yes, that's right.
That's where I met Eddie, and I reached out to him because through LinkedIn, which is a great social media because it's business people on there. Yeah. So he came in here, and he's going to tell us. He mentioned one DUI case that he was a prosecutor on. Tell about that traffic crash.
Oh gosh, so this particular defendant, she was about a 55-year-old woman, and she crashed her car, went through a hedge and into the backyard and ended up crashing into a swimming pool. They pulled her out, and they took her to the hospital, obviously, and did a blood draw. And her blood alcohol concentration, the legal limit is 0.08. Hers was 0.51, which is the highest I ever saw. And frankly, I was surprised that she was even alive.
And you got to understand, folks, there's something called blood alcohol poisoning. We've discussed this on previous episodes with Dr. Collins. Blood alcohol poisoning, you can die from too much alcohol in your system. And the target, when I was a policeman, if anybody had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.3 or more, they had to get medical attention. We had to either call paramedics or take them to the hospital. Because there have been cases where people have been, I know of one case in Indiana, she was 0.320, and they processed her and they left her in the cell in the morning when they came to get her for the bond hearing. She was deceased. You just can't leave people with such a high BAC on their own. You have to get them medical attention.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So this woman was almost twice that amount of the fatality, the 0.30. She was at 0.510.
Yep, that's right. And so she ended up, at the time, the Cook County Jail had an internal alcohol and drug treatment program. It was administered by an organization called HRDI. And so she did a 180-day program in the Cook County Jail in the HRDI program to help get her on the path to recovery. She was in very bad shape at that time.
And goes without saying she was an alcoholic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to get that high,
you have to have a continuous intake of alcohol over a long period of time.
That's right.
And you got a high tolerance to alcohol.
Oh my gosh.
There's something I saw it as a policeman. There were some people with very high BACs that you wouldn't know they were under the influence because we called them functioning alcoholics.
That's right.
They drink so much. Some of these people drink every day, and they drink so much that they're not staggering like the average person that don't drink often, and they have a little bit too much. They're staggering. Yeah, you've seen those field sobriety tests where they're staggering, and their BAC might only be 0.105. You know what I'm saying? But other people, I've had people in the 0.30s and above, where you wouldn't know that they were impaired. They walked. I had one lady, she was 0.30 something, and she had high heel boots on, and she was able to walk without tripping, falling. She was a pure alcoholic. And I'm glad they had a treatment program in Cook County to get her clean and sober.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It is very helpful at the beginning. I mean, it's always a challenge because being clean and sober while you're incarcerated is very different from being clean and sober when you're not. I prosecuted a guy who was he was a retired firefighter, and it was his second DUI, and because he just didn't drive very much, so that's why he didn't catch more cases. But he went to the HRDA program and he came out. He looked great, but he had 180 days of pension money in his bank account, and when he gets out, there was no correction officer keeping him in a cell. He had access to the liquor store. He had money to be able to pay, and just wasn't able to maintain his sobriety. It was a very, very sad situation.
But there are people I've known over the years that are so proud of being sober from that day they went sober that they actually tattooed the date on their arms.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of opportunities to get help. We're fortunate in this country that there's a lot of opportunities. There's AA meetings and NA meetings that are free. Health insurance covers it. Medicaid, in particular, covers those sorts of services. And
substance abuse program.
That's right. That's right. And I used to work for an organization called Pilsen Wellness Center. I was their general counsel. And that's what we did. We had outpatient psychotherapy services, and then we also had substance abuse programs. So we did medicated-assisted treatment, which is methadone for people with opioid addictions. And people could, our participants could come and see a counselor or see a psychotherapist every single day. It's a great program, great opportunity for people to get clean, but it is not an easy thing to do. And it's important that all of us recognize that we're human beings and our bodies are susceptible to that type of addiction.
Now, after you left the Cook County State's Attorney's office and before you became focused on estate planning, you were a defense attorney for a little bit. You defended gun cases, battery cases. Let's talk a couple of those where you acted as a defense attorney.
Sure. So I was a criminal defense attorney from 2008 until 2014. I defended people from traffic violations, all the way up to, some pretty serious felony cases, even some sex cases. And, in Cook County, DuPage, Kane, McHenry, Will, Ogle, kind of all over northeastern Illinois. And so
Eddie, let's start with that a child injury case. That was very interesting you were talking about before the broadcast.
Yeah, so I defended a woman who was charged with aggravated battery to a child, which is a very, very serious case. It's a Class X felony, which means it's punishable by 30 years in the penitentiary. And this woman, she had a 2-year-old daughter with Down syndrome. And while her child was at a babysitter, the child burned her cheek on a cup of coffee. When she came to pick up the child, the babysitter explained what happened, and the mom put Vaseline on her cheek to tend to the burn. Well, it's a bad idea to put Vaseline on a burn, and so it makes it look much, much worse. And so she brought her child to the hospital, and the hospital reported her to the police and to the Department of Children and Family Services for an evaluation about child abuse. And she ended up getting charged with aggravated battery to a child. And so she had two issues going on at the same time. One was a civil issue in abuse and neglect court, which is what we call it in the State's Attorney's Office. It's called the Child Protection Division of Juvenile Court, where they were seeking a finding against her of abuse or neglect. And then she had the criminal matter as well, where she was looking at some very, very serious penitentiary time. But we were able to demonstrate to a supervisor in the state's attorney's office about how she didn't do this. The injury was as a result of just an accident, and the photos, which looked terrible, demonstrated the fact that she had put Vaseline on it rather than the fact that she had actually burned this child. Unfortunately enough, I had a medically trained former Navy corpsman supervisor in the state's attorney's office at the time, who was able to identify that and knew that he had a similar situation when he was in the Navy. And so they dismissed the case. And I always say, as criminal defense attorneys, if you're extremely lucky, you'll get one Class X case dismissed in your career. And so I was fortunate enough to have that happen. And my client was fortunate enough to not end up going to the penitentiary for something that she really didn't do.
And that's part of the system, where the system tries to protect children from abusive parents, and God knows there's plenty of them out there. But also some people get dragged into a case that they never should have been charged with, and that's where they need a good defense attorney to fight for their defense.
Absolutely. I mean, the criminal justice system, like every other system in the United States and around the world, is made up of individual people, and we're human beings, and everyone is capable of making mistakes. And so that's why we have all of these layers, right? The checks and balances. It's to make it more likely that we don't get it wrong. But it's possible to get it wrong. It happens all the time. We hear about it in the news all the time. Sometimes people get it wrong. Sometimes the police get it wrong. Sometimes the prosecutors get it wrong. Sometimes defense attorneys. We're all human beings. We're all capable of making mistakes.
All right. You also discussed a simple battery case where the guy was falsely accused.
Yeah. So
you were defending him.
I was. So my client had this kind of long-standing feud with a neighbor. They had known each other since they were teenagers, maybe even earlier. And they were probably in their late 40s, early 50s at the time. They just didn't get along. And the complaining witness, he accused my client of attacking him, saying he punched him in the face one time. So we went and took a look at the photographs. We interviewed the doctors because he had to go to the hospital. The photographs were horrendous. I mean, he didn't look like he got punched in the face. He looked like he got hit by a truck, which was very helpful for my client because it was just very obvious that one punch is just not capable of inflicting this kind of damage. But I showed it to the prosecutor, and he's like, the guy insists that this is the person who did it. It's not an issue of mistaken identity. They've known each other forever. We're going forward. And so we had to put the trial on. I cross-examined the complaining witness as to what all the issues were and the injuries that he sustained, and had to bring in the doctor to talk about the injuries that he treated on the person. And then my client had to testify and demonstrate that he didn't even see the guy that day. He knows him, obviously. He knows that they don't like each other, but nothing happened. He had no injuries to his hand, no injuries to there was no evidence other than the accusation. And so we're able to get acquittal. So that was a really, really outstanding result because my client was looking at potential jail time. I mean, for an injury like that, I think many judges would have locked him up. And so it happens. There are people who make mistakes, and there are people who lie, who make things up.
Oh, absolutely. As a policeman, I saw many, many neighbor disputes where these guys hated each other like the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
But it didn't get to a shooting. At least the cases that I handled, they didn't get into a shooting match like the Hatfield and McCoy legend. But there are neighbors that hate each other, and I've had some very nasty neighbors over the years. Mm-hmm. But you're stuck with these people. The best thing to do is avoid them.
That's right.
But there have been people, and I knew in my heart that they were not properly, they shouldn't have been charged. Mm-hmm. But I was between a rock and a hard place. I refused to arrest a guy one time. He called the police department. My supervisor ordered me to arrest them and let them haggle it out in court. He said, let the judge figure it out. Yep. And sometimes it happens like that, folks. You're dragged into a system. You got to stay away from these people. That's the bottom line. And I'll tell a quick story one time. A guy was painting his side of the fence, his side, and some of the paint dripped over on the other side. And the other homeowner because it dripped on his side of the fence. And now you understand, there's one piece of wood separating both property. He wanted him arrested. I said, no, there's no intent. Intent is a crucial part of the law. There's no intent to damage your property, to permanently deprive you of anything.
Yeah.
And that was, I ended up not arresting the guy, but that was another complaint. Police departments, we call them beefs.
Yep.
And some of the beefs I had sweet and hot peppers on them.
Well, it's true. And that's why it's common for that situation where that police officer let the judge decide. Because, police officers, particularly today, are under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. And so they're less likely to exercise their discretion because they open themselves up to criticism, potentially public criticism. They can get doxxed. People find out where they live. And so there's a lot of pressure on police officers. And so oftentimes the easiest thing to do is to say, I'm just going to arrest the guy and let someone else deal with it.
We have a lot of questions coming in with FOID, for firearm ID cards. Mm-hmm. And as you answered one the last time you were here about inheriting stuff with and without a FOID card in Illinois. But one of the cases you handled, the man was charged with a UUW, which is unlawful use of weapon, and no FOID, and you defended this guy. You want to tell our listeners about that? Yeah.
So here's a scenario in which the police really made a huge mistake. So my client, as a younger man, had been involved in gangs, and so the police knew who he was. But he'd really cleaned up his life. He had moved to Florida. He came back to help out his mom, and he was waiting for, I believe it was his cousin was picking him up. They're going to go play video games or something like that. Police pull up. They're just on routine patrol, and they started to approach him. He got nervous, and so he walked and went into his house. They came to the house. They knocked on the door. He came outside and spoke to them, and they asked him, they said, give me a gun. We need a gun. And trying to be polite and helpful, he's like, well, the only gun I know about is that my brother, he used to be a Chicago police officer. He got injured in the academy and had to resign. He still has his gun. It's in our basement. And so he brought the police down. They took the gun, and then they charged him with possessing the gun. And so we ended up having to go to a jury trial on that. And the police officer's testimony was really not believable. They said that they had seen him, even though it was a very dark area, that he was sitting on the curb between two cars. There's no way they would have been able to see them if he was indeed sitting on a curb. They said that they had to chase him. My client was, probably about 350, 375 pounds, very awkward and gangly kind of guy. The police officer looked like Superman. He was super fit, muscles on muscles. He said he had only a 10-foot head start. He wasn't able to capture him, which was just not believable. Said that, that he had the gun with him. There was no fingerprints on the gun. He never touched it. And so, we were able to bring that out at trial, and the jury didn't believe it. And that was a great thing. And that client is one of my prouder moments. He had a bunch of old arrests on his rap sheet, and he was holding him back, even though he'd never been convicted of anything. And so after we won that jury trial, we were able to go and file to expunge his entire record. Now, most judges wouldn't have done it, even though he was eligible for it, just because there was a number of those cases. But we convinced the judge that this was a guy who'd really turned around his life, that he had been a victim of the system in a way. And expunged all his cases. And today he runs a not-for-profit, is giving back to his community, very productive, man, good father. And so those are the types of cases that oftentimes make prosecutors decide that they want to become defense attorneys, because you get to sit across the table from your client and actually help them solve a real problem. And that informs, my practice today. I do estate planning work because I like to sit across from my clients and have that close, intimate relationship and help them solve a problem.
That gun case sounds bizarre to our average listeners, but a lot of police departments put a lot of pressure on their officers, especially Chicago, to get these guns off the street. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. I arrested many people for let's say, was a suspended license, and they're facing another suspension on their license, and they tell me, hey, I know where a couple guns are. What I did, and this is the proper way, but it takes a lot of paperwork, I signed them up as a confidential informant, had them get the gun. I inventoried the gun based on their information.
That's right.
Not just, hey, give me a gun, but a lot of times police try to cut corners because they're under a lot of scrutiny and pressure by their bosses. We need arrests. The problem with police departments is it's a numbers game. How many people did you arrest? How many guns were recovered? How many DUI cases were arrested? And so on and so on, because police departments respond to municipalities and they have to justify their existence. And that's how some of these cases happen.
Oh, 100%.
And you need a good defense attorney to, and I'm not advocating, there's bad criminals out there that actually do crimes, but you need a good defense attorney to prove your innocence.
Oh, 100%. And just we have a general emphasis, today on data. Right. And so getting those numbers up, what are the numbers that drive crime? What are the numbers that, make communities better? What are the numbers that make communities worse? In the previous life, I did some management consulting for, governments around the country. And there's collection of data, but then there's what is the data that actually matters? What is the story that the data is telling? And oftentimes, people just look at there's one number. I got to collect more guns. That's the only thing that matters. It's like, well, you may get a couple more guns, but maybe you put someone into a jail cell for a year and a half, and how much did that cost? And they didn't really do it, so they weren't working, so they weren't contributing. There's all these other factors that have to be involved, and so it's very, very easy to get hung up on one or two data points and not really look at the situation holistically.
I want to congratulate you on being both a good defense attorney and a good prosecutor. And you've seen both sides of the legal system. And now you're focused on estate planning, which we talked about at the beginning of the program. I want to thank Eddie Olivieri for being with us and enlightening us with some of these stories of these cases that have been resolved through the legal system. I enjoy when attorneys and doctors and nurses come on this show and they give their expertise, because everything, it's their life experience, and this is what this show's all about. So real quickly, before you go, quickly get to your website, just in case somebody needs a quick answer or consultation on estate planning.
Sounds great. So firesideplanning.com. My email is the letter E, @firesideplanning.com.
Okay, so this is William Pelarenos signing off. Follow me on Facebook at Pelarenos Police Project. That's Pelarenos. Give me a like and follow me, and I'm going to post Eddie's appearance here today on my Facebook site, and I'm also on Twitter at Police Project 1. Catch you next week. Bye-bye.